Hey guys, welcome to another session of Epic 7. We're going to be talking about the balance adjustment preview. This is the April 16th version, the one that's supposed to drop on April 16th. A couple heroes getting buffed, not that many this time, 6, but here are my thoughts. Pavel, his S2, the cleave and the self-attack buff, does not trigger a counterattack now, so I'm assuming that they will not trigger Charles. That was one of the problems with him before. One of the problems. He had, I think, two problems. Dealt too little damage, and then the counter on Charles is just not that good. He can't trigger a counterattack, so he's a self-attack buffer. Still will do the same amount of damage, and his damage mods I don't believe has changed. I mean, yeah, the S2 is not changed. It's pretty weak, but it's a cleaving skill. You guys, by now, I think by this video recording, you have seen like showcases of Pavel being used, and of course, any hero can look good if people run a perfect team comp for them and have really good gear. The question is, like, do you want them geared? I think that Pavel now will be okay, but I think if you still have some other heroes that fulfill that role, you don't really need him. So for example, I think comparable, you can still say Euphine is a Pavel, what do you call it? Comparison? Like a competition, because she does her own self-attack buff, speed buff, she strips, she silences, and her S3 is insane. It'll still do more damage, I think, than Pavel. But his damage for Destructive Pursuit is increased by 25%. So if this is an additive to his actual damage mod, his S3 is sitting at a 1.3 right now, so it would be equivalent to a 1.55, which then will make him into the territory of like kind of like a Lilibet nuke, Euphine nuke without the enemies with a buff. So overall, it is a buff, and I think this is the buff that he needed. I don't think I can complain anything else, because that was the only downside of Pavel to me, was just the damage mods are too low. I think his S1 is still slightly low, but everything scales on speed. So you need to build them pretty fast, but the speed scaling doesn't outweigh the attack and crit damage scaling. So I feel that in Pavel's case, he will have a different usage than Euphine. You won't use him as like a straightforward single target nuker, but of course his Destructive Pursuit still has that effect where the damage share is ignored. So that could be something that would really help that damage skyrocket even past Euphine. And I think it depends on the fight. But in my own opinion though, because of lack of Mola and I have my roles covered, I still can't build Pavel yet. I still think Pavel will work really well with attack buffers outside of himself. So like with an Oxlots, I think some showcases people have showed like a fast Pavel doing his attack buff and soul burning into the Destructive Pursuit, and then having Oxlots like pump him up again for another turn or something like that. There's variations of how to use Pavel, but anyways, that's my thoughts. So buff wise, it's great. Buff wise, I think this is what we were looking for, but I myself won't be using him still, because I don't think there's an incentive to. Now Sigret, in my opinion, is one I will definitely look into building. I don't own spez, so spez can be built very, very high damage, and he can kill things even without the stun if you build them very high damage, and of course if you have Oxlots. But I don't have Oxlots. If you've already on the stream, it's just like Oxlots. Yeah, they know the meme, man. But Sigret now has an extinction, so she's an ice extinction hero. So we're definitely getting more. The next one I have to say will have to be a fire one, and we'll have the RGBs covered. With the RGBs covered, what that will mean is that the need for spez will be much lower than it is, than it was when it was just Lilibet. But this is definitely a very good buff. Sigret is already very good. She already has her exclusive equipment. Arguably speaking, her exclusive equipments are not the best ones, but I mean, I'll take it. Extra effects, extra damage. But with this being extinct, I think I have to build her. So I still again, without Oxlots, I still run sometimes in GVG and even in Arena, Assyria Tamarine and into Lilibet. But on the off chance that you get into a problem, you know, not able to nuke out, let's say two damage threats, and let's say they have a Mei Chloe on the defense team, now you can bring in Sigret and Lilibet, and that's pretty much for sure you're gonna get rid of all of the threats. You can just mix and match the earth element with Sigret's ice element and see which one has the elemental neutral or the elemental advantage, and you just take out both. At least for me. Assyria Tamarine, of course. It is Sigret, of course, defense penetrates too, so you can really land the defense break on the one for Lilibet to kill, and just have Sigret. So I think Sigret for me is high priority to build. Lidica now looks a lot better as well. Lidica has gotten dev buffs in the past. Got some very good EEs, I have to say, and now she's going to be even better. So Thornbush first is attacks all enemies. It grants the unhealable now with the hit chance down. That makes it very strong. And then the public execution, which is her S3. Yeah, here's S3. Decrease the buff duration by 1 turn. So people are saying that she's a Basar counter. And I think for sure, very high base speed. And Fire Elemental, of course, so no missing on the Basar. Basar running on immunity now is getting more and more popular because they were trying to get the ignore the Kayron S3 with the Silence EE. And now with her, if you could remove the buff duration for 1 turn and you could push the combat readiness back to 100% and grant speed down, that Basar is pretty much done for on that team. So 100%, I think Lidica is going to be very good RTA. She's already decent in RTA already, but very good counter pick if you need to deal with someone running that Basar. Or someone fast. I mean, it doesn't matter. She's really fast. If they have a slightly fast strip, Lidica is now going to be very much used. So I'm very glad I actually summoned for her and I got one. Zeno, free 5-star hero. Star's Armor is his passive, so it increases his defense and damage for Ancient Beast, his S3, by 10% every time they use a non-attack skill. It could be stacked up to 8 times. Effectiveness now is increased to 5%, and so your defense and damage dealt is the same because in the previous rendition is 8% 10 times. Now it's 10% 8 times, but the effectiveness is 5% per. So maximally, you can actually get 40% effectiveness, which is very good. Yes, Zeno is free, or he was free. I don't know if he is ever going to come back again, but he was free in the past. Ancient Beast now it has an 80% chance to silence for 1 turn and inflicts bleeding for 2 turns. Overall, kind of interesting. Someone on the stream chat was actually, before I started making the recording, he's saying that it's funny that the silence will make them not able to use the non-attack skill, so you can't stack for this. So he is a Taurus, he is a 5-star, so he would have the same stats as Dizzy, Sage Baal, and a Sazan. Very fast speed, very tanky mages. So perhaps he's usable. I don't know though. I personally don't think so, at least for me. He might be fun. I remember the days when Zeno was released, he was on GVG defenses. That was pretty interesting. Yeah, so I mean, being a free hero and they're still buffing him, I guess that's better than nothing. So I'm not gonna complain much about that. Faithless Lidica. Now, when I started the stream, when I started the video recording, beforehand, a lot of people were saying that this buff is OP. It's like, Jagan, have you read the Faithless Lidica buff? It's so OP. And I'm like, uh-oh, that's not good. Now I'm looking at this. In my opinion, it's not as OP as I originally imagined it to be. The only reason is because it's on Hysteria, which is on her S3. While the buff, I will say though, let me make it clear. I will say that the buff is unnecessary, and I think the community, most of the people feel that way. Faithless Lidica is a very good and solid pick for RTA, and especially higher up in RTA. The higher you are in RTA, the more likely the players have really good gear. So if you can maximize your full roster with really good gear, Faithless Lidica is generally one of the ones they have built very well. People were saying that Faithless Lidica already has crit chance built in because people want to run her with C-Dom. So just in case they choose, let's say, an Oxlot, C-Dom, and a Faithless Lidica, it's just like, oh, which one do you ban? You know, once they lock those down, it becomes pretty hard. It depends on the other couple heroes, of course, too. But definitely an unneeded buff. Originally, I was imagining this to be on the CR boost on the S2. That would have been insanely bad to get the skill null on the S2. The S3, because most people who run Faithless Lidica, if you're in high-end RTA again, I don't think people will run many heroes without immunity. So most likely you're still using her as the CR booster. And like I said, if people build her with crit, they use the combo with the C-Dom. I myself don't own a Faithless Lidica, but I know she is very strong. I've lost to many F Lidicas in the past in RTA, so I know how annoying she can be. But this being granting a skill null on an already, most likely you're building her with crit chance already, but if you're not, you can, and if you don't, you can still bank on the RNG that she'll crit. So especially like if you're facing, like, let's say a dark elemental hero, getting that 15% extra crit chance. So I feel that this is an unnecessary buff, and that leads me to a side topic. If Smilegate is, or the devs are listening to this, I think one of the major ML5s that you guys got to look into is kind of seeing where Sage Baal fits now. I think after his nerf, a lot of people have just given up on him. I still see him used sometimes in Arena, but honestly, you plop an FCC in there and that whole team goes to crap, especially on a defensive AI team. RTA, I've never run into someone using him as their primary strip. Not saying that it won't be possible, but I'm just saying that I don't think he's that usable. I think he needs a buff. People are saying ML Tywin as well. ML Tywin, I think, is different from Sage Baal. Sage Baal, he got nerfed to the point where he struggles a lot, especially if you can get a barrier with immunity in. Whereas Tywin still relatively works. Tywin's problem, I think, is a bit different, in my opinion. It's just that his S3 and S2 doesn't really work together. It's kind of weird. It's just a mishmash of mechanics. That's my problem with Tywin. I think Tywin, realistically, he on paper is okay. His S3 is just really weird though. But anyways, so that's my thoughts on Faithless Lidica. Very good, very solid. Again, I don't own her. I think people with her already were just gonna be hyped because she's just basically getting better. So she really didn't need the buff, but that's pretty good for people who have her. And then Broman now, I think, see now I feel Broman is a bit more, like I would use him even over Sage Baal for whatever reason, even though they both still dispel only one buff. The silence versus Sage Baal's sleep, okay, but I think Broman, again, they're both Taurus as well, so outside that, Broman is actually only a 4-star, so he does lack slightly a bit more stats, like lower HP, defense, speed, etc. But usage wise, they would probably see similar kind of things, but Broman has much more crowd control than Sage Baal does because of Mana Arrow. So Mana Arrow is now the effect chance is doubled when the target is silenced. So it doesn't even need to be his own silence. You could theorycraft teams that you can silence with other characters as well. You know, granted that you know, even Zero Ren. So it's the 70% chance to activate Mana Burst, and then Mana Burst decrease the combat readiness by a random amount between 10 and 50%. And I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. In Broman's kit, I kind of like that because you can really throw off, like, you know, what people are expecting in terms of like if they land it. So like, for example, Pasar's 30% pushback. People can still keep the exact same CR in the timeline, minus the fact that you get bad RNG and you resist his pushback, of course. But this like throws a whole whack of stuff, and 50% CR pushback is not a joke. On average, you're looking at somewhere in between. So if he's able to do mana arrow and then just do mana burst, and the thing is, I think it works on counter, and I think it works on unity set, like dual attacks. I think so. It would read that way, because DJ Basar's is like that, I think, like as well. So I think Broman, although again my problem is Mola, I probably won't build him, but he's definitely more interesting, and I don't think he needs any more buffs after this. I think the problem was the flip of the D-spell stack versus the silence stack. People were already saying that was a problem before, so I don't know how they released him without it like this, and they released it like this, which is kind of odd. Anyways, so that's it for this one. I think that was pretty good. Like overall, nothing like super like I think standout OP for me in this list. They are all decent. I would say my favorite one is Sigret, and maybe Fire Lidica. Faithless Lidica I can't speak on again just because I don't own her, but even if I had her, I'm not 100% sure like if I would be more hyped over Sigret and Lidica myself. But needless to say, it is an unnecessary buff. So yeah, hopefully they'll look into Sage Baal, because I just pulled my second one. Feels bad, man. I just pulled my second one, so I definitely would like him to be buffed. I'm gonna end this for the video recording. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.